Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Hello, welcome to Money Over 50 with Dallas and Michael. Dallas, 75-cent McDonald's ice cream cones.
Thanks, Michael. This isn't some code phrase or anything like that. We're not spies in Soviet Russia. What I'm talking about here is, so as listeners may know, I've got almost a 3-year-old, actually, who the other day we did something and we were bribing him, essentially, as you do with 3-year-olds. If you do this, or if you help me do this, then we'll get an ice cream from McDonald's on the way to your grandmother's house. So, and it got me thinking. So sure enough, we go and drive through the drive-through, and I said to the young lady working behind the counter, "Can I just get?" So of course I got 2. I got one for myself. I'm not going to get him one and not have one myself. So can I just get 2 60-cent cones? And she sort of said, "They're actually 75 cents." And of course I still said, "Yeah, no worries, that's fine." She knew exactly what I meant. But I thought, I think everyone, we talk about inflation a lot on this podcast, and we talk about, the concept rising cost of goods and services, and it's all very conceptual. And I actually have noticed this before with clients, where the minute that you use the word inflation, it's like you turn into a pencil head economist, and you can see people going, "Oh, it hurts now. You're making my brain hurt." Yeah. So inflation, and so then I've tried different ways to say that. So inflation, the rising cost of goods and services. No, that still doesn't get the result. Things get more expensive every year. That's the only phrase that I've found that actually works for people. Where I say, right, if you need $60,000 now, in 10 years' time, you probably need $80,000 because things get more expensive every year. And people go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." And obviously, not all things get more expensive, and there's a whole world of inflation stuff that you can look into and research as to, technology tends to get cheaper, whereas other sectors get dearer. But the concept of my rates bill was this amount, my rates bill never goes down.
No.
Or my any of those things.
Food never goes down.
Food never goes down.
Your weekly grocery shop never goes down.
It never goes down. So those, and when you say to people things get more expensive every year, people kind of go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." I still think there's a leap that needs to happen somehow, which is that we get that on a year by this comes back to the thing where human beings don't really understand compounding. So when I say things get more expensive every year, people go, "Oh yeah, that's probably true." Like it's not, but it's not noticeable when it's year by year, and it's not noticeable when it's a broad thing like your shopping bill or your rates or some of your cost of your goods and services, and it gets 3% dearer next year.
Yeah, people are very blasé about that, and I can understand why.
Yeah.
I think 2022. Yeah. I've just heard people starting to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this has jumped up in leaps and bounds. So, I mean, if you look at the price increase, 15 cents from 60 cents to 75 cents in one fell swoop, that's quite a sharp percentage price increase.
Yes.
Because we're looking at about 22.5%, 20%, somewhere in the vicinity. 15 cents divided by 60 cents.
Yeah.
25%, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's 25%.
Yeah.
Geez, it was staring me right in the face. It was like divisible by 4. So that's a sharp increase. Now, it's not as noticeable for everyone because it's an insignificant sum of money. However,
you divide that across you
look at it on a larger scale. So what it means, if you're doing renovations now, as I am, $60,000 of renovations has suddenly jumped up to $75,000.
Yes,
overnight. Almost overnight.
And that's if your income needs in retirement are $60,000 every year, that's $15,000. What you were budgeting for $60,000 is now costing you $75,000 every year.
Yep.
Now, The further point to this, though, where this got me thinking is it probably like I haven't bought a 75 or 60 cent cone for a long time. What it reminded me of is when I was a kid. I don't know how old I was, maybe 6 or I don't know. It's about 25 years ago. So, when I remember as a family, we went down to the Gold Coast to visit some friends of my parents, and this was my first actual exposure coming from the sticks out west here in Queensland. That was the first time that I think I'd come across the concept of McDonald's as a thing that you could just drive through on the way home. And I think it was actually the first time I know for my father that he'd come across the idea of what was at the time the 30-cent cone.
Yeah.
And so for this week that we were in the Gold Coast with these mates of Dad and his mate, we'd all pile in the car and go somewhere. Wherever we were going, we'd always go, well, we might as well get a 30-cent cone because
it was so low cost, and it was
so
like
and you know, so when you got kids, you go like there was about 7 kids in the car,
yeah,
and so you could go and all the kids could get a treat, and the adults could get a treat, everyone get a treat for next to nothing,
Yeah.
So that's in my lifetime. So that's what got me thinking about this was that when I said 60-cent cone, she said 75 cents. That jump from 60 cents to 75, yes, that's tangible, especially if it's on a bigger amount of money, that's really tangible on your renovations or on your income needs. Where it really got me thinking, though, was that concept of, so that's probably between 20 and 25 years ago, that was a 30-cent cone.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't matter for one ice cream cone, but in my lifetime as a 31, 32-year-old, whatever I am now, in my experience, my knowledge of 20 to 25 years, which is the bare minimum of people's retirement that you would want to be allowing for. Yeah, we talk about this, where if you're 65, you would want to allow for one member of a couple living for 30 years. But even if you went, okay, now we think that we're only going to live for 20 to 25 years. In your lifetime, that's the sort of rise in expenses that you're going to see from the day that you retire. When we talk all the time with people about how much income do you think you'll need in first year of retirement, and they name a figure, I still don't think people have really quite internalized the fact that that's the jump that you're looking at in what it actually costs to live that same lifestyle. So 30 cents to 75 cents. If you're retiring right now, if we have exactly the same run of inflation, which has been relatively low, really, compared to long-term averages, if we have a run of the same sort of inflation over the next 25 years, and your retirement expenses are $30,000 a year, $60,000 per year in today's dollars, which is what everyone says to us, which is rarely true, but that's a separate conversation. That is the equivalent of that $60,000 going to $150,000 within 20 to 25 years. So if you're sitting here right now going, if I was to retire right now, I'd need $60,000. In that last third of your retirement, you will need more like $150,000 in income to live that same lifestyle.
Yes, absolutely. And look, and if you because the comment that I get on that a lot of the times, which I don't agree with, the comment that I get is, but we won't be doing anything then. You will be.
Yeah.
For some reason, we view ourselves even 10 years away as being on a walking frame, which costs money in and of its own right anyway.
Yes.
If you have trouble conceptualizing that, think now that if you're retiring in 10 years and you need $70,000 in today's dollars, at 3% inflation, assuming that inflation mark, in 10 years' time, that's going to, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but that pans out to be about $90,000. Yep. I've been guilty of this because we have been in a low inflationary environment.
Yes.
And I've been guilty of plugging figures into our spreadsheet when I'm talking to dollars
as though they're
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, aspiring retirees in 10 years' time. And I've plugged in $70,000 in today's dollars if you're retired.
Yeah.
And I've looked in a mere 10 years at 3% indexation.
Yeah.
It's come out, and again, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but it's come out somewhere in the vicinity of an extra $20,000 that they need, so $90,000 a year. And I've even I've even second guessed that.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing it now.
Yeah.
In 2000, so we have had really, really low inflation
Yep.
in recent times, but I think that's really, really popping out now into it's really jumped, and it's like any type of average. The average is never hit every single year. The average is accumulation of many years.
Yep.
So I think what's and we won't go into why that's happening or anything like that, because that's beyond the scope of this subject.
Yeah.
It's enough that it is happening.
Yes.
And it will continue to happen.
Yeah.
Of course, because things get more expensive.
Yes.
As you.
And the thing that I want to also chime in, because I don't know why this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, of when people wave things away, an uncomfortable truth that they wave away. So you go, right, your living expenses are $60,000 a year now, based on what I've seen with the magic 30-cent cone from Maccas. Just based on that's a historical thing that did happen. That means that $60,000 in today's dollars, in 20, 25 years, you are going to need $150,000 to live your same lifestyle. And people wave that away by that exact phrase of, oh, well, we won't be doing anything then. I don't care. So even if I give you the benefit of the doubt, which I think is absolutely not true, as you said, that's not. If you look at averages of how people spend money, that there's some reduction in discretionary spend in probably the middle to last third of your retirement, but then towards the end of your retirement, that picks back up with medical spending. So we talk about that.
The other things the things that I see that are most expensive and rising all the time. Let's go through them. The ones that people largely can't get out of.
Yes. Yeah. There's food, there's rates, there's insurances.
Insurances.
Yeah.
So insurances are skyrocketing, of course.
Yeah.
Food. Yeah. And council land rates and water and things like that. Yeah. Electricity, power costs. So, I mean, those things, even if you are spending 360 days out of 365 relaxing around the home, they're expenses that people just don't get out of course. So this isn't a fear podcast. This is a make sure that you finish
my rant, Michael. It isn't a fear.
It is a fear.
It's a bit of a rant of mine, because what I actually see a lot, and I've touched on this in a previous podcast, is if there's a couple. There's a man and a woman sitting there, and you talk about inflation. Well, you don't talk about inflation anymore because people shake their heads and look at you blankly. You talk about things get more expensive every year. What tends to happen is that the woman, as a rule of thumb, again, goes thoughtfully and carefully, yeah, that's actually true, because she normally actually has a better scope of what things actually cost day to day. And again, that's someone probably say that's sexist, but on average, that's what we find. She has a fair picture of, things do get more expensive over time. And the husband, because he doesn't want to face this uncomfortable truth, waves it away by saying, yeah, well, we won't be doing much then anyway. So
the first thing he says, I'll be dead by then.
The first thing he says, I'll be dead by then, which I've taken a page out of Peter Thornhill's book here and gone, well, we'll die now then. If your attitude is, I don't care about running out of money because I'm going to be dead, your wife isn't going to be dead, so you can't have that attitude.
No, that's right.
And secondly, that it's not, even if I give the benefit of the doubt to that bloke who doesn't want to face this uncomfortable truth, and you go, okay, you're spending $60,000 now, which you're probably not, because everyone says 60, which is a separate issue that we'll talk about in other podcasts. But if you are spending 60 now, and you think that your expenses are going to drop substantially when you're, older and slowed down, and that may be the case. This is I'm saying this tongue in cheek because it isn't often the case. But even if it is, even if your expenses were to drop, we're talking about here a matter of your $60,000 in today's dollars drops to $40,000. Even if you're just living absolutely bare bones and you spend no money and you stay home and you use the same tea bag 6 times and you just have free-to-air TV that you watch, and you go from $60,000 in today's dollars to $40,000 and you just cut everything out, that $40,000 still turns into $100,000. So in nominal terms, the income that you need to draw in this first year is $60,000. In 20 to 25 years, you need $100,000. Even if you are cutting your expenses by a third, which you're not, and I don't think you will, but even if that was the case, you still need $100,000 in 20 to 25 years. So the point that we raised there, when we talk about things getting more expensive, it's not even the fact that we need to know exactly what that will be in 25 years or 20 years. The key point of all of this, and that's, I guess, the main takeaway here, is that as you approach retirement, there are only two directions that there's only one direction that your income needs are going to go in, and that's up. Even if you cut your expenses in real terms, in nominal terms, it's going to keep going up. So the real question is the income that you can safely draw out of your retirement savings, is that figure going up or going down?
And that's why we pound the table.
That's why I go.
That's why we pound the table when we look and we do our modelling on our spreadsheet with someone, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that are 10 years out from retirement. We look to get them to that position in 10 years' time where the green number is
the money that
well north of the red number. And what I'm talking about there is the $1.6 million, for example, that they have accumulated, or the $2 million that they've accumulated. We really, really pound the table about, okay, we need to get this 8% rate of return for you guys. 5% won't cut it generally, because what's going to happen is the green number, which is the
return that you're getting.
I won't say it's your money getting dressed and going to work for you, because I say that all the time, but it is. It's your money getting dressed and going to work for you.
Your money can only do so much. It can only do so much work.
That's a green. Think of that number as a green number.
Yeah.
That green number, if you liken that to being a bar chart, has to be significantly higher than the red number.
Yeah.
And the red number is the first year income that you're going to draw.
Yeah.
What I'm saying there is, if your first year income that you're going to draw is $60,000, that's the red number. We want that green number to be $80,000 or north of that, because we've got to reinvest some of that green to keep growing the value of your retirement savings. Because the red number is going to go up.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the thing like we're talking about is that next year that red number might only be 61,000 or 61.5 or whatever, you know. But we know what's coming. We know that in 20 to 25 years, that red number, that red bar of 60,000 is now 150,000. Or even if you are, you know, going to live this really frugal life, it's still $100,000. So where's the 100,000 coming from?
Yes, and just recently we've done a podcast called "Running Out of Money in Retirement is Not a Valid Strategy," or was the effect, and we talked about. We've seen other financial advisors model that people can run out of money. So they're modeling that the red number, the amount that you draw in the first year of your retirement, can be larger than the green number. The interest, if you like, that's coming in off your money, such that your retirement savings starts to run down immediately because of this assumption, and we think it's a false assumption, the assumption that the age pension
will kick in
is going to kick in and grow to exorbitant levels forever and a day. So we really pound the table on that and passionate about that. It's one of those things that's just the way it has to be.
I actually find this an interesting the dichotomy that people hold in their head here, and I don't know why I have this image of a man here, because I don't know why this seems to always be
because we're miserable. And we get more miserable the older we get. And I mean, you're only 30. You're 32, and you're miserable. Like extrapolate that out. Hey, this is a good thing to think of for the listeners. What about the inflation on you at 32? By the time you were 62,
going to be a nightmare,
mate. The inflation of how grumpy and cranky of an old man you are already, and how bald your head is already at 32, is just like the extrapolation of that.
Yeah, it's scary.
The compounding of the inflation on that.
Yeah.
I'm glad
that Nicola doesn't listen to this podcast. She probably cut her losses now. So. No, but I think the other thing I find interesting is that when you talk about like the hand waving thing of, the bloke saying, I'll be dead then, and then he's saying, we won't do much then anyway. The other thing that I find really interesting is that the only other time that you talk about inflation with people, and I think there's basically two buckets of people. People who become a client of ours sort of get it and understand it and immediately see that this is the real battle we've got to fight here, is we've got to fight off inflation. We've got to provide a rising income stream through that time. So most of these conversations I'm talking about are pretty much arguments or debates that I've had with people who haven't become a client, probably because I've been cranky with them and they've not enjoyed it. But the same bloke that will say, I'll be dead, but I'm not worried about inflation. That's what they don't say that, but that's essentially what's going on. The same person, when you say to them, hey, well, you should probably be saving an extra 10 or 15 grand a year to put into super. The same people will say, well, we can't afford that because we just got our rates bill or our insurance or, food's so expensive. So on the one hand, they'll tell you how things are way more expensive now and how, cost of living's gone up substantially. And that's the one of the issues that means that they can't do that. And then at the same time say, yeah, but that won't be a problem in future.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 financial advisors. For more information and resources, visit the Money Over 50 website, mo50.com.au. We look forward to catching up again soon.